Welcome to the Rural Way podcast, practical business and leadership conversations for small town living. I'm your host, Tracy Schira-Parker, and this is where we get to dig into working hard, showing up, and chasing big dreams from farmyards and small towns. So if you're building a business and a life where the pace is slower, you already know things are different. We don't have the same resources, margins, or risks, and this podcast is where we close that gap. We talk strategy that works, living a lifestyle we love, and staying true to our roots. So if you're ready, let's get at it. Welcome back to The Rural Way. I'm your host, Tracy Schira-Parker, and I finally launched my podcast. I'd had the first 3 episodes recorded since back in, I think, February, and I needed to get everything organized. So I had hired a VA who I had to then let go, and then I found another one who's been amazing, but just a lot of moving parts and pieces. And you don't realize from the intro to the music to the edits and the clips and everything in between. It was a lot of work. And I was really, I was really excited to get it done, but it was also a little bit anticlimactic because on Friday, I was supposed to release it. That was the plan. And the VA had everything. She was going to have everything ready at 5 a.m. So the stuff on the podcast platforms went on, but YouTube needed validation or verification code. And so then that got delayed. And yeah, it was all a thing. So it's now live and in the world, and it feels good to have it done. And now my brain is allowed to work towards these other episodes that I want to put together. So I am going to be doing weekly episodes that will be released on Tuesdays. And I might be doing little extras. So I might be doing seasonal ones. I'm not sure. I'll make the announcements as I make the podcast. But yeah, I'm it's like I can feel my shoulders just relax with having it finally released. So I I decided to make this episode in regards to Manic May. So the date today is May 12th. You'll see this at a different time in the future. But May for me was always that month of the year that was super crazy. May and October, but May was the month where ball got crazy. So I have 4 kids, and when they were playing competitive softball, there was 8 teams, 4 house league teams and 4 competitive provincial teams. So that meant that some were playing out of Prince Albert, which is an hour and 45 from our farm. Some were playing in Shell Lake, which was the closest, which is just around 45, 50 minutes. So as you can see, I was putting on a lot of miles because it was anywhere from an hour and 45 minutes to 45 minutes one way for practice. Plus the house league practices and games that were 30K from town. So as you can see, that was a lot of running. And between schedules, and then you bring on, I could hardly always keep up with the housework as it was, but then you add on yard work and seeding and everything else in between. It just became this month that I dreaded because I knew that it was always came with a level of exhaustion that I always felt like I had a plan, and then I'd end by by the time mid-June came along and House League was done, I was already exhausted, and it would be like, okay, another month and we got provincials done. And it just felt like this. May was always that month that it was just like, oh, if you can survive May. So what I wanted to do was do a quick episode in regards to if I knew then what I know now. Now, some things I did integrate into my schedule that really made my life a lot easier. Some things I did even later on, and it's like, oh, I wish I would have done that back then. So I wanted to share with you moms that are trying to do it all and just share some strategies and techniques that I did that made it a little bit easier. Not saying I'm not taking away from how crazy those days were, but I just wanted to share some strategies that really did make a difference, that you were able to be living in less chaos. So the first one is in regards to decision making. Instead of making decisions day by day and just leaving it in the moment, what I learned to do was that I would batch decision making for Monday mornings as much as possible.
I'm self-employed, so I had the ability to take Monday mornings to do that. If you have, you work outside the home Sunday nights or at lunchtime or whenever. But what I'd do is I'd sit down and I'd have a look at all the practices and all the games. Like there was a number of years where I wouldn't have a night off, like not one on the calendar for 6, 8 weeks. So at the beginning of every week, I knew I had 7 days, and it was just a matter of how many kids were going in different locations. And so I had to make a plan on Mondays and I would map it out for the week. And I did batch a lot of decisions altogether. If I could do it again, I would have batched even more. Like I would have made the smallest of decisions and wrote it down. Like, I'm leaving for town here. I'm leaving for practices at this time. These are the things I need to make sure I pack. And just, I would have taken it down to such a granular level that it left my brain a lot of room for space of other things. Because what happens is women typically carry the mental load. They carry the mental load of the schedules and who needs to go where and what's all happening, what's going to happen for supper, who needs what equipment. If you don't have kids in softball, chances are you have them in soccer or something else. So spring tends to be this really intense time where everybody's trying to cram everything in. The days are getting longer, you're getting home later, and it just gets to be a lot. So batch your decision making pieces. I saw something the one day about making suppers that the definition of growing up is deciding what to make for supper every single day for the rest of your life. And that's how it feels like. But if you can decide what you're making for supper in one time, decide all the suppers, because then you can just say, oh, look at, tell the kids, look what's on the fridge for supper tomorrow night, go get out the meat or go get out whatever we're needing. It allows everybody to see what the plan is, and it allows you some mental space, because by Thursday, it's like you're reacting on default. You're not making the best decisions. You're just making the decisions based on what energy is left. But if you did it all together on a Monday, it doesn't take any mental load. It doesn't really make sense, but the brain can't actually tell the difference between a big decision and a small decision. It processes all decisions the same. So if you want to relieve some of the mental load, do some decision batching. And that really it made a huge difference when I did that. And even when I wrote down, like I said earlier, the time I was leaving or what time I was picking people up or whatever it was, but getting down to a detail that felt insignificant, but really did make a difference. Second one is kind of tied together with that, but it takes it to the next level, is to create as many systems and processes as possible. So for instance, what kind of systems and processes do you have in the morning for lunches and getting kids out the door? What kind of systems and processes do you have when you get home from your sport? I'm going to say ball. When they got out of the vehicle and they got in the house, what were the systems and processes? Now, I didn't do this enough. And what I've learned over the years, especially doing the resiliency coaching and looking now at more of at a little bit of a business lens, but I'm integrating a lot more habit making behavior in my house, and creating systems and processes really does alleviate things. So if you have a system that says, when you get home, you take your dirty clothes here, you put your backpack here, you pack this, and you just have this where everybody knows exactly what it is. That system, then you're not repeating things. You have the mental flexibility to then go on to your evening system. And this is another habit that I feel like everybody talks about morning systems and morning habits. I actually feel like your evening habits are more important. I feel like your evening habits really do shape how you start your next day. So if you can have an evening habit of getting everything together, you will be set up for success the next day. The next one is delegating more than you think. So I was terrible at, it's just easier to do it myself. If I have to ask for it, then it just seems like it was always a fight and whatever. And I remember at one point it was chaos in the mornings and getting everybody out. And Georgia, my youngest, she was only, I think, in grade 1 or 2, and she insisted on making her own lunches. And so she at night would make her lunch, and in the morning she'd put it all together and out the door. And I think she was grade 1 or 2. So then I said to the other kids who were grade 7, and I think, probably grade 7 and under. I said, well, if she can make her lunch in kindergarten or in grade 1, you can certainly make her lunch. And they still, they held it over her head for a while because they're like, you wrecked our lunch making thing. You, after that, mom made us all do our own. But I realized these kids are way more capable, and they are very capable of making their own lunches, making their decisions and taking responsibility for what they were eating in the day. So we started doing that. At night, they would make their lunches for the next day, and they were all in charge of doing that. The other part that happened was that when I got super, super busy, they it probably wasn't the most elegant way of blowing up the whole laundry thing, but there was one day that everybody was complaining they couldn't find their clothes, they couldn't find their uniform. Where did you put my ball socks and all that? And I just was like, I can't keep this straight. You are all in charge of your own laundry. And again, I think Georgia was probably in grade 2, 7, 8, whatever, 8. I think she was probably about 8. And I just said, that's it. All of you are capable of doing your own laundry. And from that day on, I didn't do people's laundry. Now, was it done perfectly? No. Did they separate the colors like I would like? No. But I had to really surrender that because it was like, I can't keep up. So part of that mental load that we carry is all of those ideas of what perfection looks like and how it's supposed to be done. You need to delegate because they are capable. And when you make them capable and you make them responsible, they also gain a sense of responsibility and confidence because they are more than competent people on their own. They know that they can go live on their own. And so when all of my kids went to college, nothing, it wasn't a big deal. They knew how to cook, they knew how to clean, they knew how to do their own laundry, and they certainly knew how to think about and plan for their lunch and their meals. So delegate the things that even if you think they can't, they probably can. And if you hold the bar high, they will reach it. I guarantee you. So uh, those were some pieces. So your mental load. Think about what is the mental load you're carrying, and what can you let go of? Because if you're a farm wife, especially in May, you aren't getting help. Nobody else is helping you haul anything around, any kids, and you might be running for parts. You might be having a house full of very tired people. So I want you to actually take a minute and think about that. About what does a mental load actually look like for you? Now, had somebody told me you need to release your mental load back when I was in the chaos of like fight or flight, make it through the day, I'd be like, I don't have a choice. I need to get this done. And I don't have the privilege of thinking about my mental load because I was really in that space of it just has to get done. If I could go back and sit with her, I'd say, I know that you're like going full out, but at least acknowledge that this mental load is heavy. At least acknowledge that that's part of the reason why you're exhausted, because it's not just the going. And I get frustrated with myself because I'd be like, I'm so exhausted. Even if all I had done is drive all night, but I'd get home and I'd just be like spent. But think about all of the mental aspects and all the coordinating that you did all day and make it count. Like have some appreciation for it. And you might be better at it than I am, but I really struggled to actually acknowledge that that part was exhausting. So, and the next part is when you make your list of all the things you have to do and you make your decisions and you make your lists, I want you to take a moment and think about and categorize them because not all of your to dos are equal. So there's urgent and important, there's urgent and not important, there's not urgent but important, and then there's not urgent, not important. So what does that look like? Urgent and important are things that are in the schedule that you can't put off. It's an appointment, a game, a practice. There's things that are happening that you have to navigate to get to. Urgent and not important is maybe you wanting to attend a luncheon that is with some friends, and it's urgent in the fact of if there's a set date. It's not like you can put it off, but it's not really important. Like nobody's missing something. Um, nobody's. It's not a. They're not. A kid isn't missing a game. So not urgent but important is filling out forms or sending in a document where there's not a deadline this week, but it's going to have to be done. And so you have it on your list because it needs to get done, but it doesn't. If it doesn't get done this week, it's not the end of the world. You can do it next week. So it's not about procrastinating, but it's acknowledging that it's not set in stone for this week. But it is important. It needs to stay on your list. And then there's the not urgent and not important. And we tend to think that these need to be put at the top, but they don't. Things like, I need to clean my car. If you live on a farm, you know that your car is always dirty. And so I often would have like clean my car because it always felt like a mess. But it's not urgent and not important. At the end of the week, if I drove around in a dirty car, there would be no consequences to it. The experience wouldn't be any different. The week would come and go. Nobody would miss anything. Nobody would say anything. It was just my own thing that I wanted to do. Or if I wanted to take a bag of clothes to charity, or I wanted to like clean the garage for a week, for an hour. It's a thing that I want to do, but there's really no consequences. But what happens is often we lump all these things that need to get done in the week as equals, and they're not all equal. So urgent and not important, but urgent, and then the not important and not urgent. So take some time and sort your list, and then put your not important and not urgent. They go to the side, and it only happens if you really have time. It's that wouldn't be nice to have, okay? Because when you're when you're in the if you're in that season where your days are full and every evening you're gone, you need to give yourself some grace. And the time will come where that's all done. Your season will be done and you'll have some time. Now, do you want to look at those bags of clothes for the next 2 months? Probably not, but it's not going to be the end of the world. It's important that we start to get really honest with ourselves, especially if you're just getting into this season and you've got littles that are like 6, 7, 8 years old, and you're starting to feel like, holy man, I used to get my evenings at home and now they've got soccer practice and ball games, and then you have end of school stuff. Like May, June becomes very chaotic. I want I'd love for you to just be able to take this to heart and give yourself some grace, because it's going to get busier, and I don't want to make it sound like it's going to get, oh, it's so bad. It's great. But it really does. If you don't have a lot of support system where somebody's going to come and help you out, and you have to really learn how to sort and organize. And I always did week by week. I would have my month planned out, or the whole season planned out, and then I would break it down by the week, and then I would break it down by the day. Because if I made a plan on Monday, then sometimes by Wednesday, oh well, the practice got changed for the diamonds or the time, or I found a ride, but it was different. So I was constantly navigating that plan. But at one point, I even had a spreadsheet because it was like, if we had multiple tournaments going on in different weekends, I would make a spreadsheet of who had to go to which diamonds when and which towns. And most of the time, I got the right kid to the right place. Um, I'll tell you this funny story. It's funny now that it's done, but we were at a tournament, and Bronson was supposed to play in PA, or was supposed to. I thought it was Saskatoon. So in my head, I had written it down, and I thought it was at the Joe Gallagher diamonds. And if you're used to Saskatoon, so there's the Glen Reeve and Joe Gallagher. And yeah. Anyway, if you're not part of Saskatoon, it doesn't mean anything. I thought that's what it said. And so we got to Saskatoon. We left home at like 5:30 in the morning. We get to Saskatoon. There was an 8 o'clock game. And I'm looking at the schedule and I see Bronson played at 9 at PMP. And I was like, PMP? That's not here. That's in PA. And I was like, oh my God, I've got him in Saskatoon and he needs to be in PA. So I ran to the Diamond, told Olivia, like, I've got to get Bronze to PA. I booked her to PA, got him to the tournament. But then I was like, well, now how am I going to get everybody home? So then I stayed with him. And then I think we met her back with one of the parents in one of the other towns as we got back. But I was like, that's the only time. Other than that, I always got the right kid to the right place and with the right equipment. So one time isn't so bad. Um, but the last part is to just plan a little self-care. Now, I used to want to throat punch somebody that said, "Oh, you need to plan in some self-care," because it felt like I do not have the privilege of scheduling in some self-care. But here's what I learned is that if you don't take some time to self-regulate your nervous system, if you don't take some time to actually get your cortisol managed and get your body out of fight or flight at some point in the day, it will catch up on you. You don't get to go that hard that long and not have it come back and bite you in the ass. And trust me, the cortisol battle is still going hard. Because when you train your body to react to everything from a place of fight or flight, which happened in those years, it takes a while to train it to come out of it. So what does that look like? It means that you write it down on your plan for the week that, you're going to take time from when you drop them off at 6 at the Diamonds to 6:15. You're going to walk around the block without your phone or not listening to anything. And you're going to practice maybe some deep breathing, or maybe you're going to do some EFT, or maybe you're going to take a yoga mat and go off at the end of the Diamonds and do some stretches and put some music in and just like some yoga stuff. Whatever it is, I don't care what it is, but at 10 minutes of your day, just regulate your nervous system and remind it you're safe and secure. Everything is fine. You don't have to be running from the tiger. So I know that it's probably going to annoy you to hear that. And you're probably going to feel a little bit triggered by me saying, like, try to regulate your nervous system when you're going so hard, but it really will make a difference long term. Because we do train our bodies over time to be in that fight or flight. And so when we're talking about the carrying the mental weight, when we don't know how to self-regulate or we don't take the time and invest the time to self-regulate our nervous system, the mental weight becomes heavier. And pretty soon your brain and your nervous system is overwhelmed with everything. So if you do one thing, just schedule in some time to do that. And if you have a lunch break at work, or you can do it in the morning before the kids get up, I'm not sure when you can fit it in, but at least take 10 to 20 minutes somewhere, or two 10-minute breaks, something. And just fill your cup a little bit, fill it back up a little bit and get some sleep. That also annoyed me because I was like, I don't have time for sleep, but I spent way too many years. As soon as I got busy, I would cut off the ends of my day or of sleep, and I would just start to get less sleep in the morning and night. And then I would be so exhausted. My body could hardly keep going. And so, um, be mindful. Now, when you're getting home at 10:30 from ball and you have to be up at 6, I don't know what to say other than just be mindful of how many hours you're getting and see if you can sneak in a nap. I call them top ups, uh, but something that allows your body to build and rest and recover a little bit. And lastly, decide if it's all necessary. Like, decide, is this really necessary to do all the things? If you're volunteering and coaching and you have a garden and you have a big yard if you're on a farm and you have to clean the house and you're doing all the sports stuff, is it all necessary? And I remember I was big and pregnant with my third, and I was weeding the garden. We finally had a day at home. The weeds were high, and I was big and pregnant, and I was trying to get the yard cut and the garden weeded. And I remember crawling in the garden with on my hands and knees, and I thought, what the hell am I doing this for? I can hardly keep my head above water, and I'm weeding a garden. And it wasn't growing. We didn't have a good spot, all the things. And so I just decided, like, until at some point, maybe I will. But I just couldn't keep up. And or maybe it was my anyway, it doesn't matter. I did it for a few years. I did have a garden for a few years, and I just found between working full time, having my business, having little kids, trying to work as much as I could without paying for childcare, having a big yard, I just really struggled to keep up, and I was exhausted from running after kids. So it, what I decided is that there's certain things that I just didn't want to fight with. I didn't want to battle the whole weeding the garden and doing the yard work and doing the housework and doing the business and doing the kids. I didn't want to do it. I think that my biggest piece of advice, if I could go back and talk to that earlier version of me, would be to just let it go and quit beating yourself up. People are going to have ideas about it. They have ideas about a lot of things, and that's okay. Let them have ideas about it. You know, they're going to have a judgment about it. Let them have a judgment. But your value is too high to your kids and to your family to allow yourself to be so depleted that you just don't have energy for anything. So keep your cup. Keep filling your cup a little bit each day. And even though you may not get to a point where you're that you would really like it to be, because it is chaotic, get it to a point where at least you're filling it a little bit every day so that it's not so depleted that you end up getting sick or you end up like quitting more than you need to. Um, and and yeah. So Manic May, I always called it Manic May. Um, but if you're in the middle of that season, just try to ask yourself, what can I put in place for systems, decision making, delegation, a little self care, and what can you get off your plate? What are you doing that you feel obligated? If you're sitting on a bunch of boards and your kids are getting into that really busy season, you have to decide what are you giving your attention to? Because you can't invest in one thing without it costing another. You can't invest in outside organizations and boards and volunteering and trying to be super mom while it not taking away from something else. It's either taking away from time with your kids, time with your own self care. There is a cost, and sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes it's like, yeah, I'm willing to have less sleep and volunteer and do all these things, and sometimes it's like I'm not. And it's hard to walk away from things. But I think that when you stop and say, what is the mental load I'm carrying? Especially as you start to have kids really busy. And, I look back to those years of when I had 8 ball teams and I was doing it all by myself because we were in the middle of seeding. I didn't have any help. I had nobody to take a kid to practice or ball. I had to organize it all. Um, And I look back and it's like, I wish I would have at least acknowledged that I was carrying a mental load. I wouldn't even give myself the grace back then to acknowledge that it was exhausting. So Manic May is a real thing, and a few little tweaks. especially if you, like I said, especially if you have those little ones that are just starting to get into that and you're feeling like a little bit overwhelmed, start to implement that now. And I promise you, by the time they're 16, 17, 18, it will pay off so much. Not only will you have a household full of super competent kids who know how to follow a system, who have been delegated jobs that are well within their skill and their responsibility level, and you will just have like this household that functions, and they'll also know that this is time where mom is going to take to go and feel her cup a little, self-regulate, and you're not going to be as exhausted, and you won't be as overwhelmed, and you'll just start to approach these really busy seasons with um, not the dread that I had. So learn from me. I used to dread it because it always felt overwhelming. And I look back and I'm like, I think that if had I acknowledged that there was a mental load there, and I would have created more systems, uh, and and even delegated more than I did, I think it would have been a lot easier on me. But we live and learn. We live and learn. And some of you will think that you can't do some of this stuff as well. And everybody has to find the thing that works for them. But I want you to make sure that you know that you're not alone. Your exhaustion is valid, and we can we we can create systems to give us a little more ease. So that's it. That is it for this episode. It looks like I've been going for 32 minutes. It's been interesting planning and doing these from a video perspective, because before they were always just audio. So it's been interesting watching myself kind of navigate some of this visual thing and visibility. And we're going to talk about visibility in the future. But yeah. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. I have the school communities, SKOOL. I have not put anything in there other than a couple of posts. But once we get rolling, we'll start having extra sessions in there. So, for instance, what'll happen is in the future, not for this one, but just as an example from this episode, then maybe we would go into a school conversation and you would have a chance to ask me like different ways that I created systems, or if you have this problem, what would I recommend? So we can have a more two-way conversation over in that school community. And yeah, so make sure you hit subscribe. If you're listening to it on an Apple podcast or Spotify, make sure you press follow. And I think that's it. So we will see you in the next episode, and thanks again for watching.